Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order the January 4th, 2022 Finance Committee. Carrie, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Bell, Councilor Sullivan.
Here.
And Mayor Smith.
Here. And I want to welcome Councilor Sullivan to the Finance Committee. Thank you for stepping up, sir.
Thank you for appointing me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, much appreciated. The next item is approval of the minutes. We have before us the minutes of the December 7th, 2021 meeting. Unless there are edits, changes, or deletions, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so that has been approved. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak for public comments? There isn't any, so I will close the public comments and move on to the agenda. First item on the agenda is the November 2021 budget summary presented by Celeste Broadstreet, Finance Director. Good afternoon, Celeste.
Councilor Sullivan, good to see you. Thanks for being here. So we have the budget summary. This is for the period ending November 30th, 2021. You have that information before you. Everything's still on track. Revenues and expenditures are looking good. As you can see.
Can you click on the highlighted, please?
I'll just scroll down.
And make it a little bigger if possible.
There you go. So you see sales tax are doing well. That's about, from the September time frame, it's about a 15% increase from this September to last September. So that's a good sign of things are picking back up. Meals tax is picking back up in Old Town. From year to year, that's about a 19% increase from period to period. And secondary really increased for almost 62% there from November of last year to this year. See, our October sales tax is really, their sales tax is just going bang busters, 973,000. And sales tax are up 18% from last year. This time, it's $448,000. As I said, meals tax is 16%, $433,000 over last year. Those are our main drivers in our revenue. Real estate tax will be due December 5th, so you'll see those numbers reflected in the next report we do. Expenditures are on track. If you look at the detail, you'll see there's an increase in debt, which we had anticipated. That was planned debt service payments. And also the refuge department, you'll see a significant increase there, and that's for the new trash collection for the trash cans. So that's a one-time expense. You'll see that go down. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you for this. It's good information. It's going to be interesting to see next month that rolls in the holiday spend, so to speak. It's good to see that revenues are up, some of them substantially, in terms of percentages and obviously, overall numbers. I'm not sure. I mean, mathematically, it's clear to see what it means, but the how and the why, it's different, kind of a different question.
Different factors.
Yeah, I mean, any opinion on that?
Just looks like, sales tax is up, could be different factors, more people shopping, sale prices are up, so, higher sales tax and that, but it's still going strong. We haven't hit $10 million in sales tax since like 2009.
Wow.
So that's a really good indicator. And keep in mind, those sales tax, any revenue we get from the state, it comes through the state, it's about 2 months behind. So we'll see the December sales tax in the February report. So it'll be
So it'll be 2 months.
Yeah, it'll be 2 months out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yep. Sure.
I don't have any questions. I think this is great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day. The next item on the agenda is personal property tax relief for tax year 2022, presented by Amber Coder, Commissioner of the Revenue.
That one's not yet. We don't have a presentation.
Good afternoon, Ann.
Good afternoon, Mayor Smith and Councilor Sullivan. This is an annual presentation on the personal property tax relief rate, and it is always a wonky and tricky to explain thing. As you know, from the Personal Property Tax Relief Act, which dates back to the days of Governor Gilmore, the city of Winchester, along with every locality in the state, receives a fixed amount of money, which we then distribute across qualifying vehicles to reduce the burden the taxpayer pays. So as we have more qualifying vehicles or vehicles at higher rates, we have to distribute that money across a wider pool. So each year we have to look and determine that percentage. So a qualifying vehicle, it applies to the first 20,000 in assessed value and a gross weight of typically under 7,500, but 10,000 for certain vehicles. And then we also calculate that based on our historic rate of $3.50 that went into effect in 2006. So we have a lot of factors that come into play. What we hope in a few years is when we complete the transition from our historical monthly billing cycles to an annual billing cycle, that we'll actually be able to run honest to goodness mathematical analysis to determine this rate. But as it has been, it really is kind of throwing a dart at the board and looking at what we feel. And surprisingly, we have been remarkably accurate with our past rates, just going by a hunch. So usually what happens is I'll look at this and review it with the finance committee, the treasurer, sometimes IT if needed, if we need some help there. So we have a mix going on of billing years, because we still have our vehicles that are in the historical cycles, which will still be pulling from the 2021, last year's tax relief bucket. And then we have the vehicles, about 60% of our fleet now, I think it was 62 as of today, that are on the new cycle, and they are pulling from that new bucket. Well, I think we have about, this morning, I think we have 62% of our vehicles on the current year billing cycle, and that accounts for about 75% of the overall fleet value. Our PPTR, as you see in the chart here, has been fairly stable. Now, we do think that we can go up a percentage point for this year. And in this case, when we go up a percentage point, that's good news for our citizens, because it means a little bit more money that they are going to get off their taxes, so the net payable that they have to do. So for instance, our average vehicle is valued at about $7,000. So if all things remain the same, that person would pay $2.45 less this year on their bill. For somebody who has a vehicle at $20,000, that would be a $7 decrease in that person's bill. So when we raise the relief rate, that comes as good news to our citizens. Now there's an ameliorating factor here, which is, as I have shared with you, is used vehicle values are skyrocketing. J.D. Power predicts last year they were up about 10% across the board, and they're going to be up anywhere from about 26 to 45% for the coming year. So if things stay the same, yes, people will get this bit of relief here, but our citizens are still going to face higher bills. That is a little bit of a different subject, but one that is also important. But what we do need to do is get this rate set before we generate the bills in February, which is why it comes before you now. And I will be glad to answer any questions regarding the proposed 50% rate there.
Councilor Sullivan.
No specific questions. I mean, I agree that I don't want to say it's a guess, but it's a calculation. They've been pretty accurate as long as I've been here. The when I first looked at this several years ago, I was like, whoa, it was a lot to understand and digest, but I agree that the rates that have been proposed have been fairly accurate. The separate issue of the values is just that, it's a separate issue, but it's gonna come roaring back at some point. So I don't, maybe we save that for a separate discussion, but that's gonna be, 45% is a huge increase. And the average, I'm sorry, you think is gonna be 10 to
Anywhere
20?
from 23 to 46. I do have some J.D. Power reports that actually just came in today that show the different vehicle sectors, like a large SUV versus a compact car, and the expected increases they will have there.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't, it's pretty obvious that there's increases in values when you drive around and look at lots. There's just not many cars in many places, and it's the system we have. Unfortunately, I don't know what we can do to address it, other than maybe that's a discussion we should have in a work session or something like that to get people prepared or see what our options are. Talk to folks at the state level. I'm open to really any suggestion.
Well, from what I'm understanding, and this is probably above our pay grade, but what's happening with the vehicles, it has a lot to do with them getting the software that they need to go into, and that's why they're paying such high rates for used cars. But going back to this, so our proposed rate, how will that help you in the next coming months with our proposed rate?
The rate of it doesn't make a difference one way or the other to our office, because what we do is we enter that rate into the system so that it is calculated with the bills. We have a very tight time frame now that we have to generate the first bills in February. This is why I come to you now, because we have to have the end of the year data to be able to do our analysis, but yet we need it to come before council. So in terms of how you actually help my office and the treasurer, that's by keeping this moving and approving a rate. Obviously, anything that taxes are, we always know taxes are a double-edged sword. When it's more revenue for the city. When it's more out of somebody's pocket. So that's your job as counselors, is to try to balance that. This right here is as much of an academic exercise as we can make it. And thank you, Councilor Sullivan, for commenting that it has been accurate. We have been surprisingly accurate. We get that money from the state. So we are duty bound to distribute to our citizens. If we don't distribute it, we're keeping money that wasn't intended for our use. If we go over it, then that's lost revenue to the city. So we have been accurate. I do feel good about this number. So I'm confident, and I believe all of us here in this room in finance and the treasurer are pretty confident in this number as being reasonable. We've learned we don't like to jimmy with it a lot, so we'll just play within a percentage point one way or the other. So we do feel that's accurate. Regarding the other issue, there are some options if council wanted to consider some of those and there are some things. I've been keeping abreast of what other localities across the state are considering. That's a separate issue, but if council would like to see some options, I'd be glad to put some things together for you. A couple options are, the Commissioner of the Revenue is in charge of setting the assessment methodology. So one option is that as the Commissioner, I could choose a lower assessment methodology. For instance, our standard has been clean trade, so we could use one of the lower values. I would never do that without concurring with council, because a change that my office makes is going to affect the revenue to the city. Another option is council could choose a 1-year lowering of its rate. Now, the difficulty with that is what happens when values go back down, and then, you know, you put the council at that time in a difficult position of saying, we're restoring the rate, but what's a citizen gonna see? They're gonna see that as a tax increase, right? A third option that some localities are looking at right now is actually, and we'd have to check with our IT department to see how we could or would implement that, but they're considering kind of a 1-year sort of rebate that they would grant their citizens of a certain percentage to lower that down a bit. So that's kind of nice because you're not playing with your assessment methodology. You're not really playing with your rate that way. That's an option. And I do know some localities across the state are looking at that. We're one of the first billers of the new year. So we don't have because our first half bills are due April 5th, right? So the treasurer has to generate the bills in February, whereas most localities across the state are either generating a single fall bill or they're generating a bill that's due June 5th. So we don't have the luxury of time here as other localities do to kind of check around and see, hey, what else are other people doing? But those would be the three main options. Certainly the other one is Jeff is always as understanding as he can be to help people develop payment plans when they need to. That might help by somebody being able to make several payments, but it's not actually going to reduce the bill in and of itself. So those would be the three main ones.
Good. Kevin, yes.
So just kind of as a follow-up, is it safe, is it accurate that to assume that we have about 62% on current year billing?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to face the shock immediately this year.
Yes, they faced the 10% increase last year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at PP revenue for the past year, and I don't know if that was in Celeste's report she just gave you, but PP revenue was up a good bit. So they faced that last year, and then they're going to face that second shock this year. The remaining people who are on the 21 billing are going to see what was about a 10% across the board in their billing this fiscal year. And then they'll face the wrath the next year. Correct.
And at what point do you think that it'll all level off and where we sort of catch up?
You know, that is the multi-million-dollar question we're asking across the world, isn't it? Because we have so many factors. There is the chip shortage, which you mentioned, which has delayed vehicle production. There were so many things that shut down during the pandemic, such as rental companies got rid of vehicles, a lot of those things. So those often are used and then enter the used car market, and they just don't exist. They're not available. And then there are the labor shortages, the shipping shortages, which means those parts aren't getting there, the people aren't there to build it. So everything that we're hearing from J.D. Power and from what I just hear on the news is it's going to be another year. I think that's the mystery question is what does it look like then? Yeah. You know, do manufacturers flood the market? You know, are there incentives? You know, that is that requires a crystal ball I sure don't have. I don't think any of us do.
Good. Do you have any other questions for Ms. Burkholder?
No, I mean, I guess coming out of here, do you want a recommendation from us yet? Or?
Yeah, so what we'll do, since you don't have any more questions, I'll entertain a motion to forward this item to our, to one of our meetings with the recommendation for approval or denial.
With the rate, and if, in addition to that, it's not really part of the motion, just discussion, that we open up some dialogue with folks in Richmond about this, if that's, are they just going to push it back on us and say, you guys have all the tools you need, have a nice day?
That's right. There's not anything here for Richmond to do other than say if the legislature were to say we're going to grant everybody a lot more personal property tax relief after the fact. I think
Sure.
that's highly unlikely. I mean, it really is a local issue to say in Virginia we have personal property tax. How we distribute this relief, what rate we set, and what assessment methodology we use are local options.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to make the motion?
Motion to forward as, well, you made the motion, second motion.
No, I don't make motions.
Oh, I thought you made the motion.
No, I was.
Who is on first?
No, you were asking me a question. What's the next step for a recommendation?
Oh, I see, I thought you,
And
okay.
so I was answering your question.
Okay, I will make a motion to forward with the rate of, as presented.
All right, all in favor? Aye. That will be forwarded to one of our next meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to the next item, real estate tax relief for low-income elderly and disabled homeowners. Ms. Burkholder.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. I'm quite excited about this one, actually. One of council's goals that's come up again and again is affordable housing. And a wonderful way, I think, to look at that is how do we help our existing homeowners, those elderly and disabled folks who are low-income homeowners, how do we help them stay in and maintain home ownership? And we have done that in the past with the city's real estate tax relief program. I'll be glad to go through the history of that if you like, but it is a local option. And it used to be that the qualifying levels were set at the state, but now the locality that chooses to implement tax relief can set its own standards to meet the conditions there in the city. The last time we did a major revision of this was in 2013. At that point, there was concerns because our real estate tax relief cost was burgeoning wildly, and at that point, the qualifying limits for tax relief actually well exceeded what the median income and median financial situation of other homeowners were. And so it was the feeling in the presentation, and council agreed, that while we want to help people, it seemed a little inequitable to be offering relief to people who were better off than the median homeowner. And so we implemented levels at that time that were close to the median. Now the situation has changed, and our qualifications are actually well below what is median. And so we've had many homeowners, house values have gone up, the tax rate has gone up, and the maximum level of relief that we offer is $1,500, but actually our average residential bill is now almost $2,400. So while these homeowners are happy to get the relief, many of them who are very, very low income are still struggling to stay in their homes. Recently, I believe there was a letter to the editor. I've had some of those people come in to visit me, and that really prompted me to take a look at it. So the feeling here is, instead of saying what's our situation today and let's set fixed limits based on our situation today and revise that over time, maybe it's time to say let's do a floating scale that moves up and down, so the rising and lowering tide could raise and lower all boats equitably. So the proposal here is, rather than stay with a fixed income level, is that we would use the income using the most recent figures from the U.S. Census Bureau for the city of Winchester. And as we know, those Census Bureaus, the censuses are done every 10 years, right? So that value would stay in place, whatever it is, for 10 years. We would also have our maximum relief be the median house price, the median tax bill for a residential property in the city of Winchester. And that's a calculation that the commissioner's office does every year for the finance department anyways. And then we would do our exemption percentages based on what that median household income level is, so that we wouldn't need to come back before council every so many years and say, you know, we're out of whack, we're way too high or we're way too low. And I'll be glad to go through this in whatever detail you like, but I think this might be a good time to pause for questions.
So 2 questions. Seniors defined as 65 or older?
Yes.
Okay, and income is determined, are you getting a tax return, or are you just getting them to fill out a form?
No, we require, these are audited quite carefully.
Okay.
We get full documentation. We try to strike the right balance between a thorough application and not overly burdensome, but if we get tax returns, some of these people don't fill tax returns out because their income is so low they don't need to. We get copies of checking account statements, we get copies of Social Security statements, and so, you know, if someone actually were way overqualified, that shows up pretty quickly through the other documentation. So these are carefully audited, and it is a very rare instance where somebody would not be a forthright applicant. So we do audit them very carefully.
Okay.
I'm looking at budget impact and the using the statistics for the 210 tax relief applicants for 2021. I see currently there were 73 people that are receiving the maximum relief, and then there's another proposal of 11 applicants.
So that is difficult to understand. I can understand. So we had 210 applicants for the past year. The reason I put the max there is we have 73 of those people whose tax bill is higher than the $1,500. So they're only receiving the $1,500. If we went up to the median bill, only 11 of those people actually live in homes that are valued higher than the median home. So they would receive that 23 and change relief, but they would pay the extra above that.
Right. I'm just trying to wrap my hands around this with the amount of residents that we have in the city, that such a low amount of people would qualify for that, knowing that some people are in dire straits right now. Is there any way that you can sort of expand the eligibility, or?
This program expands it because we're increasing the income level to the median income level. We're also increasing the net financial worth, which excludes the house, from $75,000 to $100,000. That's, you know, most of these people have well under that. Some of the people have a couple $100 in the bank, if that. So this does help some people. I sort of looked at our past applicants and saw what's kind of kicking people out, how might we encourage people. I think changing the income level and floating it to the median is going to help a good bit. And just like anything else, we want to bring more people into the fold, but yet you as counselors have to consider what is the cost of this. I do think what we'd like to do too is want to try to market this as heavily as we can. We do send out courtesy applications, my office does, to people who've applied in the past. We know the city uses their web services. We put a notice on the water bill. We have a notice on the real estate bill. We try everything we can to reach people. But also, most of these people, they're elderly and they're low income. They're not probably getting things from digital
Right.
media, you know, so it absolutely is a challenge. We try to post things in the office when people come in. I encourage them, tell your neighbors, tell your friends. You know, we can certainly be creative at trying to encourage people. A lot of times what happens is somebody might come in to see either the treasurer or me, and they're concerned about their car tax bill. And they're worried about that because of their financial circumstance. And so we will recommend to them, well, do you own your home? You know, you might want to consider this. May we add you to the list there? So you're absolutely right. We try to reach as many people as we can, but deciding the parameters of the program is actually an option for council.
Just to clarify, elderly and disabled, or not, and not elderly boys, so you have to be elderly and, or can you be just disabled and qualify?
Correct. You could be under the state program. You are either, at least one of the homeowners has to be 65. So say you're your spousal partners and one person's 65 and one's 63, they could qualify. Or if the homeowner is permanently disabled. So we do not have many of those, but we do have several people who are under 65, but they are homeowners, low-income homeowners who are permanently disabled. And they bring that disability information in to us.
And so that, and it's household income, so if it's a husband and wife, you combine their income to determine their
Correct.
eligibility.
Correct. Now, let's say,
That's a very good question.
let's
Yeah.
say,
Household income. You know.
let's say two non-married people own and live in the house, a parent and a child or whatever. Then we would consider household income, but you also can prorate by the ownership by the program.
Okay. Because I just figured, I mean, two senior citizens married, they don't have much money, you know, you're gonna, individually they could qualify for all of it, but combined, they're not.
It's household income.
It's household income,
Mhm.
yeah.
I have to tell you, this is one of the most gratifying programs we administer, and I'm so glad that the city of Winchester offers it.
I wish there was a better way, and we have this problem, there's a difficult problem across the board of marketing things, getting people knowledgeable of it, especially the elderly and the disabled, because they may not be on social media, and a lot of times when they get their bills, whether it's a utility bill or what have you, many times they just look at how much they owe.
Right.
And they may not turn it over or anything like that, so I don't know.
Pat, you know, we're not in a situation right now where people are going out and about. In past years, I've tried to do as many traveling roadshows to speak to senior citizen groups, to speak to veterans groups, to speak to civic groups about these programs. Another option we could consider is this is a group of people that tends to have a religious affiliation. So, you know, we could look at sharing some things with the local faith community to say, will you get this out? I tend to try to reach out to people that I know in that community to try to reach, but you're exactly right. When you want to share a message, you have to look and see how's our target audience receiving messages.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Just one more, kind of in the weeds, but just popped in my head. If coordinate this relief with the mortgage company? Because really, a lot of these taxes are collected when they pay the mortgage. So how does that work?
Mhm.
Is it, do they, I'm just curious as to how that,
Mhm.
that works in the real world.
That's a great question. So there's several parts to that. First is we send a letter out, dear Mr. Sullivan, you have qualified, you're getting this much relief, and we don't send the letters out until council has set the tax rate for the coming year, bless you, because that way we know how much the tax bill will be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we say you've qualified for 50%, your tax bill is going to be this is how much you're going to owe. If you have a mortgage, we suggest that you share this with your mortgage company. At the same point, the treasurer sends files to the mortgage company. So if your bill were $2,400, but it's actually only going to be $700, then Jeff is going to send that $700 to the mortgage company. So one way or the other, they would know that, and then the homeowner could work with them to make the adjustment to the escrow payment.
Yeah, because that's where it kind of flushes out. Is the,
Mm-hmm.
literally, the monthly bill would be lowered if there's a mortgage.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Most of our people are annual applicants. So they've already got that going. But obviously, we want to catch as many new people as possible. We, if new low-income elderly people happen to be here and are new applicants, and a lot of this happens face-to-face. Most of these people come in with their applications and sit down with us and
Mm-hmm.
go over. There's some who mail them in, but there's a lot that happens with one-to-one communication. And so not only does the letter say that, but we'll share it with the individuals.
I may have missed something in here, and you probably have the answer right off the top of your head. Is there a set number of how many people can apply for this? There
No,
is?
no,
So
no,
it's-
no.
It's just
No.
wide open then?
Right.
Okay.
It wouldn't be, nope, sorry, we've maxed
There's no
out
cap.
on 200 applicants,
gotcha,
you don't
yeah.
get to do it. No, sir. The way you all would decide that is by saying, let's set a best guess for what the qualifying limits are. But beyond that, whomever qualifies would qualify.
Right, because I see that the maximum amount is $2,300 that they could get at any qualifying level. Right, okay.
And the reason we did that was just to be fair, because let's say maybe somebody lives in an $800,000 home, which they may well choose to be, but they could still be low income. Is it fair and equitable to ask their fellow citizens to pay that full bill for them? And it seems to me, which is why I put that in the proposal, that the median bill is a very fair and equitable cap to put on. But certainly you're free to propose
Right,
other things,
right,
more
right.
generous, less generous. And most of these people, out of the over 200 people, fewer than a dozen are in homes that are above the median value.
May I?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any guess as to, we captured 20% of this population, 50%? I mean, what's our average here? I mean, just curious. I mean, it's no right or wrong answer. I mean,
That's an excellent question, and I don't have an answer to that. I know there are people we're missing, and I know there are quiet little old people out there because, and I'm saying little old people because I'm just thinking of some specific people that I've known in the past, that they simply were never raised to say it's okay to ask for help. That's why reaching out through the faith communities is often a good way to find those people. When I've gone door to door, I've taken note of those things and mentioned that we're a fairly small community, and again, they do tend to come in a lot of times if they're struggling with a personal property bill, and we can reach them that way to try to help them apply for that there. So I know we're missing people. I hope we could maybe encourage some more people to come in, but I'm not sure what an estimate would be.
Right, and then the other part of it too, because this is for the elderly and the disabled, and I'm wondering if the caregivers of the disabled are aware that who they're caring for can't qualify for this too. So, so a lot of the people that could be getting it are being missed. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. I don't know if we have other marketing means. Do we ever market some of our city programs with placards on the sides of buses or on the sides of our trash trucks that go out?
Well, we have a communications director here.
Amy knows the challenge. She tries everything she can, and yet people say, I still didn't know. So
I know.
It is absolutely a challenge.
But since you did mention buses, the transit, I do think that's a good idea. It doesn't have to be on the side, but it can be on the inside of the bus, like you do, like if you're in a big city and you're in a bus or a subway, and people are sitting there for the amount of time that they're traveling. They do read these things.
I was going to say doctor's offices. They all go to the doctor.
Right. Well, those are tricky, and of course, you get a lot of people from outside the city.
Yeah.
And also, right now, a lot of that paperwork is missing because of COVID. But yeah, where do people read stuff? Bathroom stalls, sitting on a bus, those sorts of
All right, I'm not gonna.
Well, I've been places, and there's a lot of marketing on the bathroom doors, and
No more. Okay,
believe me, I spend a lot of time thinking about this.
Do you have any other questions?
Shall we go?
Stand down.
We should move on. Do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to forward this to council as presented.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This will be forwarded at a later meeting. Thank you, Ms. Burkholder. And the next item, Jeff, are you going to join? Checks and balances in local government, the roles of the elected treasurer and commissioner of the revenue. Does he have a presentation for us?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Jeff and I are here today because with the recent city. Oh, thanks. So how do we swipe? All right. With the recent charter changes, we noticed that many councilors spoke up in favor of checks and balances, but it was also clear, and understandably so, that many councilors just really didn't understand what does the finance department do versus the commissioner and the treasurer. How are we separate? How do we work together? And how do we build efficiency? And so that's why Jeff and I are here today to just give you an overview and answer any questions.
Well, again, thank you all. I know Ann's done a couple of presentations with Mayor Smith and Council. So I'm gonna thank you all for allowing us to be here today. I sincerely appreciate that. And as Ann was talking about is one of the things we want to kind of give a little background on the Commissioner of the Revenue and Treasurer's Office. We're 2 of 5 locally elected constitutional officers in the state of Virginia. And these positions have been in place basically going back to the 1700s. And then ultimately, they have been basically unchanged from the current, in case of the Commissioner of Revenue since 1851, and in my case as the Treasurer, 1870. And so, as we're seeing that and we're reading into this and being a part of that, you know, we're thank is the people of the city of Winchester that vote for the positions, and you know, and I think this goes to say that goes way back before my time, and you know, but in sharing with that you know, what we're doing things is being able to work together with council, which is a blessing as well, but then also mainly the citizens that come in each and every day to pay their bills here, and they rely on us to do what we're supposed to do. And so, you know, I think that's something to be said, that aspect of that part of things. And so what a blessing it is to be able to do that. And just as that part of things, the Commissioner of Revenue and Treasurers there are elected. There's 36 cities and 91 counties, or 127 across the Commonwealth, that have Commissioner of Revenues and Treasurers in positions. There actually is 2 cities and 4 counties that have another form of, or alternative form of government besides the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer, and that's 6 of those. So a total across the Commonwealth of 133. And so, you know, as you can see, it does happen, but it's, you know, it's only 6, and so it's very small compared to across the state of Virginia, or the Commonwealth of Virginia as well. So, and you.
Sure. So while we appreciate one point that was made in the presentation is that it's good for the city to look at, you know, what's archaic and what's outdated versus what's a good plan and what's still there. So what we've seen across Virginia is that this is a system that has stood the test of time. There have been a few recent changes, as you see here. In 1973, Roanoke County citizens voted to adopt an alternative form of government. They eliminated the Commissioner and Treasurer, but just 3 years later, those citizens voted to bring that back. And what they found during that time was that the citizens liked having an elected official that was directly accountable for each of the different aspects of their taxes, and who answered their questions and was responsive to them. And also another big factor was actually appeals, protesting the quality of assessments, and increased and revenue dropped during those 3 years. So they decided that what they had was a pretty good plan. In 2004, there was a proposal for Colonial Heights, and those citizens voted against the change. And similarly, in 2008, the citizens of Manassas Park voted against it. In a more recent change, Loudoun County in 2012 had a reform commission, and they made various recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And actually, in that case, they decided to revert to additional assessment functions, going back to the Office of the Commissioner of the Revenue. And what that commission cited was that good governance, accountability to taxpaying citizens, prominence of the function, consolidation of record keeping, operating and governmental interface, cost elimination, and cost recovery from the Commonwealth were all very good reasons to go back and to make that change. So that's what we've seen recently. One thing that was noted by the city attorney was that there's very little case law out there. That's absolutely right. And the reason for that is there haven't been challenges. It's a system that works well, and it is easy for the citizens to understand. It's been an efficient and a cost-effective system, and that's why we have it. And this is one of our favorite slides right here, and I'll let Jeff go over this one. And this is one we use when we do the Insight Citizen Academy.
One of the good things about we want to keep is in checks and balances and working together. And the form of government, as it says here, stood the test of time. And it's simple, but it's direct accountability to the citizens, and it tells them exactly how it happens. And as you can see, we have three components here. One for each elected body. In the case of tax rates, the city council, that's one elected body. The assessments is the commissioner of revenue, and then the tax bill is in the treasurer's office. And what it says, and it's very simple for the individuals as they come into my office, and this is one of the things that I use in trying to explain to them. Sometimes, you know, they're complaining to me, well, why is the tax rate so high? Go see council. But the thing is, you know, council established a rate. We understand that, and then the assessed items of the things that are happening is done by the Commissioner of Revenue, and then ultimately I send out the tax bill. So so they have a question about their tax bill, they come to see me, and sometimes they're not happy. Sometimes they just want an explanation. Sometimes if they want to know what the assessment or how it was assessed, you know, they go into Ann's office and see Ann or one of her staff members, and then ultimately, I'm sure as council that you've heard more than once, you know, well, gosh, our tax rate is higher than such and such, or this person, or this county or city. And so, but the neat thing about this is a very simple slide and it makes it easy for a lot of people that really don't understand, and some of the citizens that come in as if all ages come around, and it's, I think, Mayor Smith, or somebody just made the comment that sometimes they just look at their bill and they pay it, you know, and they really don't understand. But someday all of a sudden it comes in and it sits down, and they finally take time to look at the bill and say, well, gosh, I never realized this. And so it makes it nice to be able to sit down and explain to them. And it's 3 steps basically, and this is who kind of brings the steps together. And this is how things work out, and it allows the citizens to understand where their bill's coming from. Maybe they don't agree, maybe it's too high, they don't have the money, they want to pay it, but at least they understand the bill, and that we can have an opportunity. And as Ann and I have, and I stress that I have an open door policy, that if anybody wants to come in and I'm available, I'll stop what I'm doing unless it's an emergency, and try to explain with them. Of course, as we know, with COVID, it's been a little more difficult to allow people to come into our offices and stuff, but still, some way, pull them to the side, maybe we're talking through the glass or whatever, but still try to give them the satisfaction and the understanding of, this is your bill, this is how it's arrived at, and this is what you can expect and when you can expect it. And so that makes it a whole lot better for them. And I think that we all work together as one body, but 3 separate components to come back to develop the revenue that the city needs to be able to operate and do what we need to do, ultimately going back to the citizens that ultimately came in and paid the bill in the very first time as well. So
Yes. So, we won't spend a lot of time on this, but you might be also interested to know that we have a lot of interaction with the compensation board in Richmond. So the comp board measures for each of us. Our offices do a combination of state mandated duties and local duties. And so we have over 50 workload measures for each of our offices that we report on each year to the compensation board on the state work that we are doing. And based on that, the state will say, okay, you have about this much manpower doing state mandated duties, and we will reimburse the city for a portion of its cost based on that. Now, it's interesting to know that they don't reimburse for work done by the locality, and but they do reimburse for work in our offices. They don't monitor our work products, they don't evaluate our offices, but they do help audit and govern some of our accreditation programs, such as our career development program, which is our certification for salary supplements for the state, but they do not issue salary supplements for employees in the Department of Finance. That would be solely for the constitutional officers. Okay, so that plan that was proposed was shifting positions from the constitutional officers to the finance department, which would have a potential net loss to funding to the locality of about $270,000, because that's benefits that we get to the city, the direct supplements from the compensation board. While that doesn't offer a true picture of how many staff members we need, that would be a tremendous loss to the city to get that money.
And then as we were talking, and we use the acronym CDP, the Career Development Program, and it designates and executes and manages both in the Commissioner's Office and our association and in the Treasurer's Association of Virginia, respectively. And then this purpose is to educate and develop best practices so that ultimately we can continue to grow in what's available and what we should be learning. And right now, there's approximately about 150 master commissioner in the revenues and treasurers, and then there's about around 500 or so master deputies that are enrolled in participating in our programs. And like in the case of my office, because it's based on population, and because with us having a population of under 30,000, the treasurer, myself, has to be certified, and then also I have to have at least 2 master deputies in my office in order to receive the funding as well. So in my case, I just had my 3rd deputy became certified, so I have 3 master deputies that have now been certified. Unfortunately, one of mine, I'm going to lose her probably this year sometime. She's going to retire on me unless I can find some duct tape that won't allow her to get out of her chair, but I don't think that's going to happen. But so I have that as well. And then also in Ann's case, she's going, I believe she has about 6 master deputies in her office, along with Ann as the commissioner, is a master commissioner of the revenue as well. And so not only that, but also we have to work towards office accreditation, and it's nice to announce that both our offices have for years been accredited through the programs that are offered through the state. And so it's a nice thing to say that your office is accredited, and we're doing what we're asked to do, and we keep our offices where they need to be. And so, but the good thing about it too is they also offer regular training through coursework and continuing education. And with COVID and stuff, before you had to go to various areas wherever they were given the classes. Now they're doing Zoom classes, and so that you can sit in your office or at your home or whatever with a laptop. And the courses usually last about a day and a half, and then you have to take an exam if you want to. Once you're certified, you don't have to take the exam, but it gives you a few extra points. And in order, we have to be recertified every 4 years in order to keep the funding that has been granted to us from the state. And so it makes it a little bit easier because, one, it's the people, the individuals are getting accredited and being recertified. But the good thing is you're not going somewhere, so thus you don't have the motel cost. You don't have really the food costs and stuff that people would have to spend overnight to go to these classes, where now they can do them in our offices or at their homes And so they're being educated, which is great, but also that we're saving some costs there as well. But in some cases, you know, you still have to travel a little bit, and they're talking about maybe possibly going back to in-person classes, but you know, that we'll see how quick that happens. But with that being said, you know, the career development program is very important to both the Commissioner's office and the Treasurer's office, because it allows us to keep up to speed of what's happening throughout the state. And the good thing about it too, the nice thing was when you could go in person, the possibility of networking and seeing what other people's, sometimes you think you're on that island by yourself and it only happens to you and everybody else is fine, but once you get there you realize some of the other people are going through that same situation. So it's nice to pull them off into a corner or whatever and saying, how are you getting through this? We're going through this, how are you working through this? I understand you're going through this same thing. So that makes it nice, but in the meantime, nowadays, you can still pick up the phone, cell phones, make a phone call and ask them the same questions. But by being in person and stuff, it made it a little bit easier, but I understand the situations that we're in, and sometimes financial resources are not available, so we do the best we can to compensate, to get our employees trained and continue with the continuing education as well.
And so to summarize, by virtue of being elected officials and within our associations, we have ongoing training and professionalism. There may be a lawsuit that comes down, an attorney general ruling, things like that, a tax commissioner bulletin we might not otherwise be aware of, but we keep up with that and have that. Similarly, the finance department undergoes regular training for the things that the finance department does, but those are separate. So we can understand why you might say, gosh, these are different departments dealing with numbers. Aren't they similar? Well, to give you another example, we're as different, saying that we're interchangeable or we're the same might be the same as saying that law enforcement is the same as fire and rescue. You know, they're both similar, they're both first responders. You call 411 and you're gonna get someone, and there's some similarities, but their professional training and what they do is very, very different. You wouldn't say, well, let's take a firefighter and have that person fill in law enforcement, or vice versa. And similarly, the training, the background, the skills, while some of the skills may be the same, the training, the background, the specifics of our duties are very, very different between the departments. But nonetheless, there is cooperation, and our citizens certainly have the right and a very fair expectation to expect cooperation amongst their elected officials. There's several ways that we do that. For instance, constitutional officers here in the city, each of us has a memorandum of understanding with the city, so we abide by certain policies with the city, and that helps offer stability. It helps clarify some things. We can also expand that as needed. In some localities, they have memorandums of understanding in terms of what financial information can be shared. Really, I don't think that has been an issue here. We're bound, and we well should be. And each of you as taxpayers, as business owners, you want to have the right to expect that your tax information is confidential on a specific taxpayer or a specific business. However, council, economic development, planning and zoning, other areas often need aggregated information to be able to make plans or to see where things are going. And so we are more than happy to share that information, to develop those sorts of reports to the extent that we have it and our technology allows us to do that. But that way we can get the best balance between protecting individual taxpayer confidentiality and sharing that financial information. We also, both of our offices, participate with the locality audits. But in addition to that, through our constitutional offices, both of our offices have significant other audits that we undergo annually that are in some cases even more extensive. So we have some extra checks and balances and audits that we go through there. As we all know, the primary objective is citizen services, and we are day in, day out, we are customer service. And we are, in many ways, the main offices with which our citizens interact. They see our wonderful public works people who come twice a week to pick up recycling and pick up trash, and they see those people hustling, and they see what a wonderful job they do. They see law enforcement with a presence. They see the effects of clean water and good roads and public utilities. But in terms of having direct interaction as a taxpayer, we are one of the main ones. And Jeff and I both, at all levels, we both have open doors. We answer that, we do that. In terms of the commissioner's office, we also offer certain state services, like state income tax preparation. More and more that's gone online, but we certainly do have people. Some of our low-income people will come in and ask for help for that, and we provide that for. And we do that. It is something that I wouldn't be required, and certainly a Department of Finance wouldn't be required to do, but as part of our office accreditation, that's an important customer service that we offer. And probably the number one part of citizen service is maintaining confidentiality, and that is the sworn duty of our officers and staff, and we feel very important. We hold that very importantly. Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add on this one?
Well, I just think it's, we have, and it's, and I'm sure it happens, but we have quite a few people that come into our office, believe it or not, that just wants to talk, sometimes, and it's, it's all part of that. You take the time to share with the people. And I have to be honest, as most of you know, I'm an ordained minister as well. And I've actually had people come into the office, right, wrong, or indifferent, but I did it, shared, just asked me to come, they want me to pray for them. Is that part of the treasurer's duty? Probably not. But again, it's something to be there for an individual that might need something, because you don't know what that person is going through, or just have someone to talk through them. The staff gets to know some of the people and share with some of the people. And so I think it's truly a blessing to be able to have the opportunity and to be there for the citizens regardless of what they're there for. And I know you all do the same thing, being there for them. And Mayor Smith, as you're down on the mall and stuff, I know you run into people all the time, and I'm sure you share with them different things. So thank you for doing that, and Ann and everyone, what a blessing it is. So I think it's the idea in the course of our actions and our jobs is to be there for the citizens and know that what they tell us and what they share with us is confidential, and we keep it that way, but we're there to work with all the departments within the building, and that's a blessing as well.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about the arguments for independence, certainly the history of Virginia, the current trends, and the results have proven as to what we all know, which is government works best when it's closest to the people and directly accountable to them through election. Think of how frustrated people are at the federal level, even at the state level. Sometimes it's very difficult to reach our elected officials directly. But here at the local level, our citizens are very fortunate that they can reach someone. They can reach that person who is accountable directly. And the buck stops with us because we are answerable. With the separation and the checks and duties, we have very little bureaucracy here in the city. And bureaucracy it's necessary. It's not necessarily wrong, but certainly it has a stigma. And the more you have buried without direct accountability, the more frustrated citizens are. Our citizens have consistently believed that they should continue to have the ability to elect those officers that they think are most qualified to carry out those various functions of government, whether it's their city councilors or their constitutional officers. It is very unlikely that the citizens of Winchester would decide, no, we don't want to do this. We're not qualified to choose the people who should make these decisions. We're not qualified to decide who should be responsible to us. Our citizens here in Winchester very much value their right to vote and their ability to vote, and we get a good turnout in our local elections. So if there is any change of form in the local government, it should come from those citizens themselves. It should be at that level. Segregation of duties is also a very important and fundamental aspect. It is a basic building block of risk management and of our internal controls. So because we have shared responsibilities and separations of duties, Virginia has prided itself and continues to, as does the city of Winchester, on very clean local government. We have very few instances of fraud and very few instances of errors. And that's because of those three different components of what makes up the tax rate, the assessment, and the tax bill. There's an elected body in charge of each. So there's no one body has too much authority, too much accountability, and when something comes up, it's noticed pretty quickly because we all live downstream and back and forth from each other. So this segregation of duties, which is certainly at the very heart of the Constitution of the United States, as well as here in Virginia and Winchester, it protects the taxpayers, it protects the locality itself. It creates that space so taxpayers can feel comfortable to get the answers and understand that the process is fair.
Commissioner, just for time, are you going to go through every single
Nope,
bullet point?
we can, so let's go through. Residual concerns, are there areas that we could be more efficient? Probably so. Could we do it with fewer people? Probably not. There are not any extra people in our office. I don't think anybody in finance has idle time. The manpower we have is pretty lean and mean as it is. The duties still remain, and what opportunities do we have? We really appreciate the relationship with Dan Hoffman. I feel like he has a good respect for our offices. We have a good respect for his. We have good communication there. Where could we do better is probably technology and innovation. Our technology is highly outdated. Most things we still do are with paper, postage, and toner and printers. And we spend a lot of money on that. We cannot control those costs because that's our #1 way. And we do have two good quotes here for you at the end to wrap it up. One is from Thomas Jefferson. I know of no safe depository of the ultimate powers of society, but the people themselves. And I think it's a good full quote, but if you want something a little lighter, you can go with P.J. O'Rourke, which is giving money and power to government is like giving whiskey and car keys to teenage boys. Thank you. We'll be glad to answer any questions.
Wow. First of all, if I may, just the last two quotes. I find it interesting that you would choose those two. P.J. O'Rourke, for someone that encourages giving whiskey and car keys to teenage boys, and then Thomas Jefferson, a former slave owner, that just blew me away. But neither here nor there. Councilor Sullivan, do you have a few questions?
No specific questions. I mean, it's more of a presentation. I was pretty clear. I mean, a takeaway from this is there's a slide on the checks and balances, and, you know, the tax rate, the assessed value in the tax bill makes perfect sense to me. I don't know how much my marketing brain kicked in and said there's a way to get that message out. We probably should do a better job of that. As maybe something to move forward on how we do it. I don't know, Amy's not here, but, you know, come up with some idea to, you know, just like we would with what we discussed earlier with the tax relief, so people have a better understanding of how it all actually works.
I have a couple of questions, but I do want to talk about why we're here, and thank you for that presentation. The proposed charter change that was presented to council, and it was initially so that your offices, the finance department, can find a way to work together. And it seemed that it was interpreted or understood in a different way that we wanted to eliminate the Commissioner of the Revenue's office or the Treasurer's office. That is not the purpose. We would like to see some cross-training, just like you both do within your offices, within the finance department, because one way or the other, we all have to work together for the citizens anyway. I have a couple of questions. Would it be beneficial to move the real estate position to the finance department? This is a question I'll put out to either one of you.
I think we probably have a good balance as it is right now. There's a lot that happens with, you know, I think having the finance department manage the outside contractor with the biennial reassessment seems to be working well for the city, and that appeal process, I think that having the other questions and things like about the billing, why the those sorts of things is good to have in our office, because the tax relief, those things, because those are intensive customer service programs, and we're already set up to do customer service. So I think keeping your customer service elements together is a very good way to do it. I think there's a natural division the way those things are now. These things take a lot of work. For instance, the real estate program, tax relief coming up. We spend a lot of time doing that. And then I have people that I divert to that during that season, and then I can divert, so I can put extra resources on that during that season, and I can put them to other tax duties the way the tax year falls. So I think it's a good use of resources the way we have it right now. I think that our citizens seem to understand it pretty well. To me, I think it works the way it is.
Okay.
I think it would be confusing to citizens if we take more and more tax things and say, no, you contact this person about this, you contact this person about this. I think it would feel more confusing to them than to be able to say, this is the customer service office and this is where I come. It's my feeling when it comes to customer service.
Yeah. Speaking of customer service, and I know you had mentioned about, let's say, the business licenses and the meals taxes. Being a business owner, I know that if we haven't gotten it already, we're going to get this big package for our business license and then the meals tax remittance slip. Do you have any idea, like, how much? Well, for one, and this is something we've been talking about for years, about trying to get it online.
We would love it.
And so, like, it was mentioned how the utility people are out and about, and the citizens like to see them, but they see them doing the work, but when they need to pay their bills, they go online and do it. And I wonder, how come your office isn't online as of yet?
I have been in office 12 years. I have an IT background. I think from the time I got here, I have tried to increase technology, and all I can do is make recommendations to the IT department, who then might make things to the city manager. The city manager presents the budget, and council approves it. It is significant. I'm sure Mary probably has some quotes. We would love investment in technology, but we can't do it because it requires a city movement to make that to make that progress. And unfortunately, it's not cheap.
What do you mean by a city movement?
It would require first of all, getting to the budget for council to approve it, and then it would require moving to that. It would probably also require different software, because I don't believe our current enterprise vendor has those options. So we might need to look at some other options, but I know IT has run some estimates. I'm sure, I would love for council to consider that. So would the treasurer. We are very behind in all areas of technology. There are many, many things that our people still do with calculators and pens and paper, but it requires investment on the part of the city. And believe me, we understand. If you're looking at investing in public safety and schools versus $1 million in software, it's kind of hard for council to bite the bullet on those things. But we can't, I don't have the authority to just buy those things, and we can't, they're not things we can just develop in-house. I would love to have additional tools.
Right. So I guess for Mary, can you chime in where we are with that?
Right. Well, I know Tyler, is this on? Great, thanks. I was short, I gotta adjust it. We've been working with JP Morgan Chase. I know Jeff has been on the forefront of this, and probably not so much because we haven't gotten to her areas yet, but our systems are set up, we use another party for billing. So we just have to get the systems to be able to feed through a company. It'll be a Paymentus, I believe is the next one we're working with, which is what utilities use that you mentioned. So what we have to do is there might need to be modifications, like an Ann's shop. You know, when you're talking about business license, meals, all those excise taxes that I know people desire to have online. So they will take modification, and us absolutely working together to get that working. Hopefully with JP Morgan Chase, they're pretty much top in the industry. We've had some good conversations with them. So we're rolling out those that are kind of our low-hanging fruit, like real estate, EMS fees, and those items first. And then ones that'll take modification in the system, the ability's there with Central Square, which is our enterprise system. There will be some modifications on the system, which our IT folks can handle. So there might need to be changes both on IT end and on Ann's staff end, but we can certainly get there with where we're at. I think it's been a positive, I'll let Jeff chime in, a positive experience so far with where we're going. So we hope to see that real estate by, goodness, the next, I'll jump out and say 60 days, 60, 90 days, hopefully on that. But
For?
at least being able to pay online for real estate.
We're working with JP Morgan. Also, right now we have Click to Gov, so we've had that out there anyways for people to pay their real estate bills, and so they're going to kind of migrate that and work with that so that they can pay that, and ultimately goes through JP Morgan, and if they want to use a credit card or whatever, that will be used for Paymentus, that aspect of it. But they've had that ability in a sense, but we're trying to migrate to try to as much with that and that aspect of it, and then also working with the Winchester Parking Garage Authority, the people that rent their spaces on a monthly basis or whatever will be able to use JP Morgan, and then also the fire and rescue, the ambulance fees, they'll be able to make payments and stuff through JP Morgan. do that. So that's kind of the three things that we're working for in that right now.
And those are payments.
I was getting ready to say.
You're asking
Yeah,
filing and payment, just like you do with state sales tax for your business, right? That is a completely different issue. We did look into some things with our vendor a few years ago, and they were absolutely not successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good conversation to have, and that it goes back to that initial equation. I mean, there's the rate, there's the assessment, there's the collection. The collection part is what he was talking about. The Commissioner of Revenue's assessment angle and software related to that is a whole different animal that I was shocked when I got here and was told it was the green screen, DOS-based software. That we're still using that to manage accounts, for lack of a better term. And when you then try to marry that with what the actual code says about what you have to list, how it gets assessed, when it gets assessed, things like that, to me, there's no way to do it accurately and fairly for everybody. At best, it's a statistical kind of analysis of our collective tax base. I know you do a good job, but it's impossible to be perfect. It's just not.
Right.
It's an inventory kind of thing that's just very difficult to manage. But so I think we're talking about two different things. Where I mean, I certainly would like to see a better system than we have now, just for my own peace of mind. When issues arise, oh, well, it was this, it should have been this, here's what I mean, all the equipment in your restaurant, for example, or any business, that's listed on there for tax purposes, I guess you have to go around and do an audit. I mean, it's honestly,
Right.
audit is one of the two ways.
The business license and meals tax filing system that we have now, it doesn't even include an invoice. So our IT department had to generate a custom one. So it's a little hard to think about when you have something that we have to jimmy to make it work on an in-house basis, then
Right.
we're a good leap from getting that online. But do I want it? Have I wanted it for 12 years and every year? Is that something that comes up in budget? Absolutely.
So, I guess I'm asking, like, how can we get there? How can we get to the point, and I understand that there is a formula that you have to look at when you're doing the assessments. And, but I know that there has to be some type of software out there
There are.
that because I think the time is right, that if you were to put in your budget and say, this is how much it's going to cost. And yes, we've had the last couple of years have been difficult, but we are starting to see some type of relief and people getting somewhat back to normal, and there's some revenue sources out there and even grants. But I would like to see come before council some type of way that we can get your system online and make it easier for taxpayers, businessmen, and things like
Absolutely.
that. That would be great. If we can work towards that, and I would love for you to come back with some proposal of what that would look like, that would be great, and I think council would be very interested in that.
I think IT probably has some good numbers and some pricing from other systems, and I'll be glad to work with the treasurer, the finance department, and the city manager to get those before you. I think, they've just been so phenomenally expensive that they've just never survived the budget process. But I agree. We at some point we do need to move forward, and we want to be business friendly.
I mean, I've always thought that, yes, there's gonna be the upfront cost, obviously, that's always the case, then there's the ongoing maintenance cost, but I think we could justify the expense by increasing the accuracy of the system. I just think it would be that much more, reliable.
Mhm.
And I think that we would save in the long run by moving in this direction.
Right, to know, like
Whether
with,
whether it's in the math side of it, the hours we spend doing it, you know, whatever, so.
like with anything, the upfront costs are going to be the highest. And so we expect it, but then the benefit that it's going to give to our citizens and will be far greater. So I didn't have anything else. I want to thank you all for the presentation. And did you have any other things?
No.
Thank you all, and Happy New Year again.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
With that, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. We are now.